So the new Audiotool came out with the Stagebox device, and the mixer has some of its biggest new features, but there hasn't been much of an explanation on how they should be used and also how they're meant to be a replacement for the Centroid. Although it's not a forced replacement, the Centroid is still there and it can be used if people prefer it. The studio kind of does guide you towards using the Stagebox. So I thought I would make this quick unofficial tutorial before the more proper official tutorials come. And this one is aimed more at kind of like existing users who have experience with arranging the desktop and sounds using Centroid. So from beginning, you will see that when you drop devices onto the desktop, they all auto-connect to the Stagebox, and each of these channels here is actually represented also in this mixer panel. By default, you do see it in this collapsed one channel view, which is also dynamic. So if you're working on this synth, it will show this signal chain, and it will even show it if you are working on the effects on that signal chain. So it's pretty smart. It's meant to work quite seamlessly. It's just kind of follows you around and shows you the most relevant controls that you need right now. But yeah, you can also expand the mixer and reveal all of them at once and work this way. And let me just show you some of the features you have in the mixer now. So you have the usual gain, post gain, mute solo, and also you have your EQ over here. But some of the cool new features are actually the fact that we now have a high pass and low pass filter straight on the mixer strip, and a compressor which is actually collapsed by default. So to collapse and expand modules in the mixer, you just click their name, and the compressor is actually off by default, so you need to enable it. You also have your inbuilt internal mixer effects, reverb and delay, but you can add more effects. So this will be the same as on the Centroid. You have the aux 1, aux 2. You can add more and route some effects through them, and then each channel can then send through those effects. And what's cool is that you have way more than you used to have on the Centroid. So that's the basics of a mixer. There's a lot more stuff you can do with it, but I'm not going to cover it in this brief tutorial. I will now go to some of maybe not so obvious things that you can do with the Stagebox. Some people might have a setup like this in one of their old projects where they have a Centroid that mixes all their sounds, and then also on top of that they have a master effect chain. So on pretty much all my tracks I use a EQ and a multiband compressor on my master effect chain, and you can still do the same with the Stagebox using these master inserts. So the way I would set up the same kind of mastering chain is I would drag a curve and then a quantum connected to it, and I would connect them to the master inserts. So now when I play, you see that the pulse register is playing through this channel, but it's also playing through this mastering chain. And maybe I play something on the Heisenberg as well. You can see they're all going through this, and if I turn this down, you see the master is now very quiet while the individual channels are still up. So yeah, that's how you add your old kind of mastering chain that was in line with the Centroid into the new Stagebox. Another thing people might like to do is having different Centroids kind of grouping different sounds. For example, I like to group my drum sounds in one Centroid, and then I have my separate aux sends, and I also like to have a compressor on the drums group. You can do the same in the Stagebox by utilizing grouping. If I have multiple drum sounds connected to multiple channels. I can select them by holding Shift, and you can also select them in the mixer. It's all synced up. And then you just need to press Control or Command G to create a group. So now we have a group, and each group also has inserts. So for example, here I have a Centroid that's going into the compressor and then into the main mixer. I can also just add a compressor over here and connect it to the insert. So if I get a drum sound, you can see it's traveling through this gravity compressor. Now you can also just use the internal mixer compressor. I like the visual of the gravity, but you may have other effects on it, like saturation or maybe even reverb. So I didn't set this example up very clean, but let me show you a more like real life example. So this is a quick track I just made, and yeah, it has all my usual workflows. I have my mastering chain over here. I have a bit of EQ reduction on the lows, and I have my multiband compressor. And I also have a drums group, and I have my custom aux send and some of these channels sent to it. And also my drums group is going through this compressor. And another thing I didn't show in the previous example is that you can also just use the internal compressor and sidechain to the mixer channels. So here I have my bassline and chords, both sidechained by the kick. And this just like helps you keep your desktop nice and clean and more focused on sound design, and everything that's to do with mixing, you can just do as much of it as possible in the mixer and kind of have that tucked away if you prefer that.